Welcome to the ceopulse podcast, where you find the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. So super excited. Now we have another woman in the show. So thank you so much for being with us, Tracy. So yeah, you're a real estate professional. You're crushing it. You're super active. You're doing flips. You're doing all kinds of stuff. Tell us about it. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. ¿Qué onda, güey? Thank you for having me on, and I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Yeah, so just like you said, I do a little bit of several different, it's all under the same umbrella, but mostly a flipper, and I'm also a landlord. I pluck off certain properties that have really good equity and good cash flow to them, and just like my Instagram handle says, I'm building financial freedom one beautiful house at a time. So before I started working for myself the last 6.5 years, I did all of this for other investors for almost a decade. So I was behind the scenes for a long time, and everything that I did for them, I do for myself now. Nice.
So you've been at it. What was your beginning before you kind of jumped into the into doing stuff on your own and kind of branching out on by yourself? What's your background like? You said you were in it for a while before you got into it.
I was. So I didn't have, like, my family's not from construction or real estate or business or entrepreneurship. My parents were military, so I really had no exposure to this. And sort of a long story short, I had a previous landlord that he knew I had got into the mortgage industry a lifetime ago. And he reached out to me later, and he's like, "Hey, are you still doing real estate?" And I said, "I am." He goes, "Listen, I have like a couple dozen properties, and I need some help," because he worked for the municipality and he was doing his own property management, running the real estate business on the side. And he said, "Listen, I could really use some assistance, and I trust you. You're kind of in the industry, different leg of it, but what would you think about coming and working for me as an assistant?" And I jumped on it because at that time, Rafael, I don't have a background in finance. And that was when loans, I mean, you know exactly how it was, like right before stuff hit the fan. I just didn't feel good about it. I mean, it just, seeing what other people were underwriting, I'm like, this can't turn out well. And my heart was never really in that. So I jumped at the opportunity to work for him. And then he ended up telling other private investors about me. So I ended up working for other private investors, essentially contracting my services out. And then that led to working for one of the biggest firms in town, again, behind the scenes as an executive assistant. And they were really avant-garde in what they were doing to hedge their bets towards foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, short sales, distressed real estate. So I got to participate in the last downturn without being exposed to it without having to really be in the thick of it. So I cut my teeth on distressed real estate. I mean, that really is my entire background. I've had my license at certain times, but it really just goes to the business models of the investors that I'm working with. I'm not an agent. I have no desire to be, number one agent. So that's not really in my wheelhouse, but that's how I got started. And then after about a decade of that, I figured I've had enough I've had enough experience at this point to where I just need to branch off on my own. Well, as you know, and probably most entrepreneurs, it's like, it's so easy. I've seen how this is done. I've gone to the course, I've done this. Yeah, exactly. So you learn really quickly, and no matter how much back of house experience you have, you never really understand what it's like to run your own business or be a solopreneur or an entrepreneur until you hang your own shingle. And once that is initiated, it's an entirely different world.
I love it. Hanging your own shingles. It's really good that you got the opportunity to start off in almost, I mean, it almost sounds like a paid internship type of
exactly what it was.
You said something really, really interesting, which is I mean, you kind of got to play without, or you got the experience without being exposed, right? And it's almost like a paid internship. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really appreciate out there. Like right now, what I see almost in a general sense is the notion that you can jump into something and then start crushing it, and almost by entitlement you're going to be maniac right out of the gate.
Right.
In my experience, it's a completely different setting. Usually, what happens, and that's you have to dig the trench. And you have to put in the work somewhere, somehow. You're not going to get paid the big bucks at the beginning. And that's fine. I mean, maybe for the most part, right? but putting in the work, I mean, you spend a decade, kind of, polishing and refining what you wanted to do. And then when you got ready to it, you went out and then just did it, right?
Absolutely, man. Well, and even not even polishing and perfecting, but just learning and watching and growing and connecting. And that's exactly how I think of it, as having a paid internship. I mean, it was, formal positions, but it really essentially was a paid internship. And I wouldn't exchange that for the world. And a lot of times, people ask, I'm sure they ask you too, like, hey man, how do you get started in real estate investing? How do you get started in real estate investing? And I've posted that on my Instagram and I tell people, but a lot of times people don't want to hear that. They want to know, how do I make, X amount of dollars in real estate every year? How do I get to this point? And I'm like, you have to lay the tracks. You have to dig the trench. You have to start somewhere. And when you tell people, it takes massive action. And that's not to say that you can't crush it in your first year or two. That's not usual, but it's possible. It's like, oh, it's not like the shows. Oh, it actually is a real business. Oh, there is risk involved in this. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's not 8 hours and then, go sit on the couch. It's 8 hours and then go figure out, how else you can improve.
But I'll tell you, I produced more in the last 6.5 years than I did the 10 that I was working behind the scenes. And not everyone is, I'm not saying I'm the best entrepreneur or, meant to be behind a desk working for someone else, because I've done both. And I think that there's a time and a place to where do I learn? Where do I go? Where do I attach my wagon to someone? Where do I, go off on my own? But I can say for me personally, because I got driven to the point where it meant so much to me to have that independence and see what I could produce, that I just saw what I produced in the last 6.5 years versus the decade beforehand. And I wouldn't exchange it for the world now.
So you're talking, in terms of production and being able to run your company, run your business and kind of live on your own terms. With all that considered, what is your biggest thing about, being an entrepreneur? So you have seen, the typical 9 to 5, high responsibilities with, 1 hour in equals 1 hour out pretty much. As an entrepreneur though, I think we have the opportunity to create a lot more with that time. What's the thing that you value the most so far about your entrepreneurial experience?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it was the independence that you really get to eat what you kill. And the thing I struggled with the most, in all honesty, Raphael, I think I still struggle with this a tiny bit, which is, what am I really wanting to get out of this? What's my end all be all? Is it to be the number one flipper? Is it to own, X amount of rental properties? Is it financial freedom? If it's financial freedom, what exactly does that look like? When is enough enough? And it's difficult sometimes, especially in this industry, to not let your ego or she-go get involved. And so for the first few years, the driving force was, I have something to prove. Volume is the key indicator of success. And it wasn't as thoughtful as I am now about it. So what I really value about entrepreneurship is you can create what you want for yourself. But I think, let me know what you think, but I think a lot of us have this challenge with, we want the business to grow. And then once you get busy, you get so busy that you forget, like, man, why did I sign up for this in the first place? I could go, like you said, hour in, hour out. I could go get hired down the street, punch in, punch out, live my life. Is that satisfying? Maybe not for personalities like ours. So the success is addicting, the volume is addicting, but at a certain point, your bandwidth versus your bottom line can be two different things. And so I had this realization where I'm just like, growth feels great and it feeds your ego a little bit. But at the end of the day, how much do I really care about XYZ of the growth versus what do I really want to accomplish here? So I think that that's a long-winded way of saying, choosing your own story, those books where it's just like, if you want to go down the forest path, turn to page 22. If you want to go in the castle, turn to page 26. So I think you have to have a heart for getting punched in the face every morning and saying, thank you, sir, may I have another, and letting that toughen you up and get back at it twice as hard the next day. But you also have to have a head for watching your P&Ls, learning to read a balance sheet, is growth good right now? Are we about to go into a recession? What does that mean? And what does that mean for what Raphael wants in your personal life, in your professional life? What does that mean for what I want? Likewise. So entrepreneurship is really choose your own story. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes struggle with getting into the thick of it and getting busy versus being impactful with their time, and also choosing going into it what that really needs to look like.
It is creating your own story. For the most part, we actually have control over what, what route we choose to take on in businesses. But I think one of the biggest things is it's that, and it sounds like we had a similar journey, starting off, you begin with a certain drive, a certain goal, a certain, number, a certain, something to hit, right? This measure, this metric, this goal in place, and I'm going to go and crush it. Yeah, it will uplift your ego, and that works for a certain amount of time. But then I think we also evolve out of that. So I think entrepreneurship, one of the things that it's done for me, it's brought that awareness to have a need for balance in different areas, right? It really comes down to having that clarity that you're talking about, and what does it look like to me? My success as an entrepreneur is this picture. Right. It's having this type of activities, it's having this type of money. And, somebody else's, version of success be subjective to their own story. Right. And I really like how you phrase the whole thing. It can be one of those things that kind of, carries you away if you don't have that, that level of clarity.
Well, and I think it's duly important to understand what you're good at. To oversimplify it, like, what are your talents? And most entrepreneurs tend to be multifaceted and multi-talented. And it's like, I can change a light switch, but I have no business doing heavy work at any of my renovations. Like, I'll do some DIY stuff around there, but like that is not one of my talents. That is not the highest and best use of my time, So there's certain things where it's like, I'm sure you're great at a bunch of different things. I bet you're superb at a handful of those, and I'm sure you're excellent, and there's things that come naturally to you that's your genius zone. And so I think the more you grow and have stumbling blocks or have your aha moments or eliminate things off your business, I think that's really hard for entrepreneurs, because it's like, well, I can't have my license. I can get extra income from doing listings. I can be a buyer's agent. I can flip houses. I can be a landlord. I can open assisted living. It's like, bro, slow your roll. Like, what is your genius zone? Can you bring in people that are like excellent at at their things, and you partner with them, or just minimize what you're doing and 10 times on what that one thing is, or that, maybe one or two things. So that has been, that's been sort of interesting path to touch and go on what works well, what brings me joy, what brings me good income, and what has that balance that you talk of. And to that point too, I don't know if balance is ever the right word in entrepreneur land. I think that there's something that is closer probably to counterbalance. There's never 50-50, man. Yeah.
No, it's, I think well-rounded entrepreneurs are never balanced.
No, never.
It's because we go heavy, and we need something to pull us back and do a reality check. But going heavy into something and having the ability to create a counterbalance through whatever method you have. I mean, it can be somebody who brings you to that, to that centerness. It can be, just you going into meditation, books, reading, journaling, right. Whatever. Everybody has their own way of doing it, right? But yeah, absolutely agree. It's a matter of counterbalance. Mm-hmm. You mentioned aha moments through the trench work, basically. So what's one of your biggest aha moments?
Oh man. I think one of the first things that comes to mind is I was thinking about opening a brokerage and becoming a broker and getting a bunch of agents, and then they could refer me and oh man, it was just like brain damage, but I was like, but if I set up this business model, then I could increase my referrals for flips, and I could do X, Y, Z. And I brought it in front of my mastermind, and they're like, listen, child, you just need to really consider if that's what your genius zone is. And again, like, I'm not trying to be, I was never trying to be like a number one agent. I had my license, and that's sort of an example of, we can do all these things, but the more, honestly, Raphael, the more simple I've made things, the better I feel with it, the more in alignment I feel with it. And typically you see your income go up too, because you're not diversifying all these energies towards things that you're probably decent at and focusing rather on what am I great at? And when you're in alignment, you just tend to attract it more. You know what I'm saying? So part of my aha moment is letting go of, if I don't work my fingers to the bone mentally, physically, and otherwise, I'm not going to be able to produce enough. But if I let go of the things that I could do, but I shouldn't be doing, and focus rather on, you know, what am I good at? What am I talented at? What brings me joy? It tends to open up the channels towards, okay, now you're in alignment, and now you can be really serving at your highest and best good. I know that sounds a little ethereal, but a little woo-woo for the dudes out there. But I mean, you know how it is when it's just like, you feel good. You've worked 12 hours a day. You've barely had lunch, you know, calls and texts and emails are coming in, things are flowing, and you're like, man, I'm in the zone right now. So for dude speak, it's learning to get in the zone and realizing you're like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like to be in alignment in business.
Yeah, when you get to that level of enjoyment, it's not work anymore. And what happens, I mean, we can be, you know, all that much more creative. You know, now, you know, start opening up to new opportunities and stuff that we weren't even contemplating. I think it's part of the growth experience. And it sounds like you've just based on the conversation, it sounds like you've done a lot of mindset work, a lot of connection work, and it goes hand in hand. I think that is the essence really of it's the other half, and perhaps the most important half of being an entrepreneur, because you're kind of out there, you know, by your own. Whether or not you have coaches, whether or not you have, you know, support structure in place, at the end of the day, if you're at the top end of whatever organization you're running, you know, stuff's going to land on you, right? We can't always do checks and balances with people and resources, but you're still going to have that strength and centeredness. That's where the other, you know, portion of it plays in as far as the mindset.
Totally.
It sounds like you've worked your mindset quite a bit over the years, and how has that impacted the way that you approach things? How has that like helped you capitalize, improve? And I don't want to say capitalize, maybe the wrong word, but see things from a better standpoint when you're coming into them.
Yeah. Oh man. I think, and I want to hear what you think about this. I don't think you can develop mental grit unless you have been through so much that at some point you're not impervious to pain, you're not sheltered from having emotions, but you're just like, you know what, sucker, bring it. Because I've been through enough to where you're just like, there's ebbs and flows and ebbs and flows. And the more that you come back to center and just say, I'm not going to be latched to whatever that emotion is, or that person reacted, or someone trying to take money from you or screw you out of a deal, or the market changes. And I know as an entrepreneur, you just have to be able to develop that grit. And it's just through having been through so much stuff, man, you know, and I'm not trying to gloss over that, because it's a hard-won battle to get to the point to where my mindset is more in alignment. And that's not to say I don't have bad days. We all do. But just like anything else, like you love to work out, like that's part of your jam. But if you want to keep a good physique, you got to hit the gym however many days a week that you do it.
Put in the work.
You got to put in the work. It's not like, oh, okay, cool, I got the six pack. It's July. It's pool, you know, pool party season. And then all of a sudden you just let it all go. It's like, okay, well, to keep this type of physique, you have to show up and continuously do it. And it's no different with mindset. And so one of the things that I adopted into my millionaire morning, my morning routine, is when I get up, you know, I do a few things, and then I've been trying to get back to meditating. I haven't been as consistent about that, but in the background, I'll put on something on YouTube that's either educational, uplifting, or enlightening, because as you're still kind of getting into your day and you maybe have a little bit of, you know, sleepiness, the mental fog that's coming off, it's really a prime time to let your mind be exposed to how you're priming yourself for the day. And I don't care how crazy it might sound, but doing things to get yourself in that prime state, like Tony Robbins is really big on changing your physiology to get yourself in a state, you know, so like even standing like a superhuman, or envisioning, like you're a super visual person. It sounds like you can creatively see things in your mind. You're more of a visionary. So like imagining the last time you really won, like maybe you closed a deal that you thought didn't have a snowball's chance in hell to get done, but you crushed it. And saying, when was the last success? Or what do I want to visualize in the future? I see myself making whatever, 6 figures on a deal, if that's, you know, something that's a goal for someone. But that's something that really helped me. And when I was in just mental battles of something happening in business or personal life, I was just like, you can't sit in the emotion of it. Get yourself primed for what it looks like on the other side of this. And I'll tell you, man, if I had to do push-ups or dance around in my living room to like to music, it just was so altering to condition your mind to go there. Because the more you do that, like the more bicep curls you do, it's just, it feels natural. Where it's just like, if you don't lift probably for 2 or 3 days, it probably starts to feel unnatural, right? And it's no different with the mental workout. So as entrepreneurs, surround yourself, make your environment supportive to staying primed, because you are going to get beat up nearly every single day. Not on a weekly,
Absolutely.
monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. Like you can go ahead and just pencil it in. Going to have crap kicked out of me, you know? So
yeah, pretty much. It's part of the business plan.
yeah. Yeah. Just expect it under the operating agreement, you know, be mentally battered. So anyway, it's a matter of getting primed. And I learned that has helped tremendously as well. Just being able to mentally withstand, you know, and just what we're going through now, isolation. And that's a huge thing with entrepreneurs, Raphael. A lot of people don't like to admit it, but entrepreneurship and business ownership, you were a lot. You're on your own a lot, physically or otherwise.
Absolutely. It's I think it comes down to being able to build that resiliency. I don't maybe a handful of people do come with it out of the box, and they don't need the experience, they don't need the trench work, they don't need. I mean, it's just a given talent, virtue. I haven't met a lot of those people. Most of the people that I've met and that I've gained a level of success and are, they're crushing it as entrepreneurs. They have that trench work built in, and they do have a way to prime themselves and created, somewhere or another, that level of resiliency, right? To adversity, figuring out, like you said, I mean, you have, sometimes you're just getting, pounded left and right, and you want to throw in the towel, but you got to have that mindset, that wraps and gets a hold of you and says, you know what, fuck it, bring it on. Let's do it. Let's give it another shot.
And that's a huge part of it, is you have to have that fighter's mentality, and not forever, but I think as entrepreneurs, you have to have that, really, motherfucker, you're gonna try this, and then you want to get up, and it makes you want to do that much better. I want to succeed even more now. I want to do this. I'm going to improve. Or man, that did shine a light on something that I need to improve. How am I going to improve? And I think that's the difference between staying power. Even if your business goes out of business, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are looking at that right now, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how their business, well, if it has something to do with their business before, it has less to do now than the last financial crisis, right? And if you were looking down the barrel of, most likely my business is going to close in the next 6 months, okay, what do we do with that now? How are you choosing to react to that? Are you going to get up and fight another day to say, I still have the heart of an entrepreneur and I want to do this? Or are you going to fold and, cry on the couch for the next 6 months to say, coronavirus hit and there's nothing I can do about it? Well, you can. You always, always, always have a choice.
Yeah, you can use it as a scapegoat, or you can use it as fuel, right? It's interesting. One of our mutual friends, Jesse, put up a post this morning on Instagram, and I saw it, and I hardly ever respond to stuff or post stuff online. We were talking about that earlier, but I don't know. I felt like going on a rant, and it's exactly what the rant was about. I mean, we can either be part of the solution, choose to be part of the solution, or we can be part of the problem, and it comes down to how you build that level of tenacity, that level of resiliency, right? You can't see it as an opportunity to say, all right, cool, it's not my fault. This thing just bottomed out and it kicked everybody's ass. I'm part of it. Or say, you know what, I'm not going to go out without a fight. I'm not going to go out without giving it everything I have. Right. And then what happens? Like, next thing you know, you find a joyful place of, where you're operating from, and then you find yourself in flow.
Right.
I mean, it's happened to me time and time again where I feel man, I'm in a rut. But I stick with it. I do whatever I need to do to reset myself and prime myself, which I want to ask you about that. And just, put myself in a higher vibration, in a better place overall.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when that happens, calls start coming in,
Yeah.
and, people start, picking up my not shitty vibe and wanting to do business
Right.
and it's amazing how it works, but it works.
Right.
That's how it happens.
Absolutely.
So how do you prime yourself? How do you prep yourself for that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I have found that my morning starts the night before, and I don't care how crazy you are there, being the Gary Vaynerchuk of you need to hustle your face off for 90 hours a week. Listen, bro, that doesn't work for anyone long term. I think if you're new to business and you're in a startup or in a hockey growth phase, great, have at it. But once you reach a certain level, you cannot operate at that level of energy for long. However, once you're in a good flow and you need to maintain high energy, you do have to be a little bit more regimented about your schedule. So my morning starts the night before. I have to make sure that I get enough sleep. I'm more creative. I notice a difference in my cognition if I get enough rest. So that's important to me. And in the mornings, again, I want something on in the background that's either uplifting, invigorating, educational, or motivating. And sometimes I'll just put on headphones and listen to a playlist that's, whatever motivating music is for you, it is for me. Like I have music that's motivating for me. And when I am a little bit better about it, I'm pretty regular, but not every single day, I'll go into meditation. And a lot of times I don't dedicate a lot of times in the morning because I'll get monkey mind and the phone starts ringing, especially with contractors, it's rather early. And so if I can spend 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, breathing deep, listening to a guided meditation and going through what it's saying, it puts me in enough of a headspace to where I'm ready to go throughout the day. And again, sometimes in the middle of the day, I'm like clenched up and I'm stressed out, and it's just a matter of taking deep breaths and going through and just bringing myself back to that. So music is a big one. Working out really gets me, in flow. Probably the same thing for you. Reading. So reading ideas of other people, watching podcasts, it really gets my wheels spinning. So it's not so much about exactly what I do. I almost want to, hearing myself talk about it, it's almost like what I don't do, which is not going down the rabbit hole of worrying about how things might be or being in an environment where I'm exposed to a lot of negativity or things like that. So I'm really regimented about what I allow in my environment, and especially in the mornings and then the evenings as well.
I love it. Also considering what you don't do as part of your morning routine, that goes a long way. And I hadn't phrased it like that, but it makes perfect sense. For example, one of the worst things I can do to set up my day is to pick up my phone and look at my email first thing in the morning, or look at posts, social media. And that's what 90% of the population does, and it's kind of like a normal, right? And I used to be pretty bad at that. I would pick up, the first thing I would do in the morning would just reach for my phone, look at my emails.
Yeah.
Like somebody sent me a damn email at 2 a.m. and that it's going to change my life.
And then you're just more reactive.
Yeah. No, at that point, I think I've lost the morning, because now I'm trying to catch up to the morning as opposed to actually, creating my morning.
Yeah, it's huge. So I would imagine a lot of your audience is male. So I took a meditation class years and years ago at the Village, and I forget the name. I want to say it was the Vaughn Group. Anyway, so he's a mindset coach, but he worked with a lot of NFL players and athletes and ex-athletes. And so I'm in the room full of, I don't know all these folks, but, high level executives and athletes. And I asked him, I go, how is it that like quarterbacks and these, 6'7", 250 guys, want to do meditation? How do you not lose your edge when you're like, it's all cool, bro? Like, just, we're in a good vibe. Like it to me, it felt like you were losing an edge. And if you aren't a little bit defensive and a little bit have that fight in your belly and that fire in your belly, life's just going to happen to you. And his response was like, listen, you are actually more effective when you're centered, because you're expecting things, like you can see them happening almost in slow motion, if you will, versus, oh my God, I'm reacting and life is happening to me and I'm taken off of center because these 4 things just happened in my world and now this is happening in the economy. It's like, listen, when I am centered, I can see what's happening now. Those plays that we did in my mind 100 times, I see it happening on the field now. And same thing with entrepreneurs. Someone I DM me about this the other day on Instagram, because I put something about meditation, and he's like, but what does it really do? And I go, it just makes you less reactive and more still. You're coming from like another analogy that I thought was really helpful is like ninjas. They're deadly, but they're so like meditative and just quiet and
stealthy. Yeah.
Stealthy. That's a great way to put it. So if you think of meditation, if you need dude speak for it, just be like a real estate ninja, or an entrepreneur ninja. It doesn't, I swear to God, guys, it does not make you lose your edge. It makes you that much more effective and ninja-like. So if you want to be a ninja, gotta meditate.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're still lions. We're out, trying to hunt, and we eat what we kill. But there's always room for that growth, for that internal growth. And I think it comes like the first stop is at least giving it a shot to find that space of just thought or nothingness. It's not even nothingness. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I just know that if I sit there and I don't do anything for 10 minutes, I'm going to survive. I'm going to be perfectly okay. And when I come out of it, I'm going to be, better set for what's coming. So.
Right. Yeah. And there's, and a couple different things that come to mind too is, I do struggle with just being anxious about a lot of things and overthinking and overanalyzing. And so meditation has been really good, but an exercise that might be good for some of your listeners is playing out the worst case scenarios. So, okay, so the business, takes a 50% loss or 20% loss. Okay. So then what? So then, one of my HELOCs gets shut down. Okay. So then what? So then one of the renters doesn't pay rent. Okay. So then what? Okay. So then this property burns down. So then what? So then we have to declare bankruptcy. And then what? So it's a matter, I think a lot of times we're just fearing the worst, and we have this expectation that if the worst can happen, it's going to. Okay. And what if it does? Like, you will survive, given that it's not, something happening with the coronavirus, obviously, but like, right. It is just sitting with the fact of, I can't predict exactly what will happen, but if that happens, guess what? I'm going to show up another day. Like, I'm not going to get knocked down. Like you said, you might be in your head for a little bit. It's going to be shitty for a while, but I'll reset. And like, I'm still going to be here, baby. So like, I'm going to play to the best of my abilities and forecast this the best way that we can. But at the end of the day, meditation plays into the fact of, I'm not going to be as reactive. I'm going to be the center. I'm going to be the captain of my ship and just not react, and just instead watch this and be in flow and act accordingly.
Right. I love it. So yeah, I mean, meditation mindset, it's an inner growth. I think that's the other half that it's hardly ever spoken about in entrepreneurship. And I think that's what makes the whole thing kind of come together, right? There's a lot of adversity and it does not matter what, industry you're in. Right now, I mean, for example, restaurants are getting an ass kicking. In real estate, we haven't really gotten the ugly end of it yet, I don't think. But it's not to say that we shouldn't at least foresee what could potentially happen and prep for it, both right. Emotionally, financially, strategically, right? But at the end of the day, like, if you don't have that level of awareness, if you don't take that time just to sit there and think a little bit about what's going on and process, you're not going to be ready for that stuff. You're just going to be reacting as opposed to actually acting with some direction. Create a thinking space for whatever it is that you're working on. If you're super pragmatic about things and you have a hard time meditating and focusing on your breath and trying to levitate from the floor, you can always think of a problem that you want to solve and come up with a structure on how to approach that. And that's meditation in itself. It
certainly can be. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still giving you that space. What do you think are three of the most important qualities or principles that an entrepreneur should follow to make it through the highs and lows?
For this next recession, or just in general?
In general.
Well, I think if this recession, oncoming recession, is to teach us anything, it's don't always think that when things are good, they're going to remain that way forever. And when things are bad, they're also not going to remain that way forever. So give yourself a little bit more preparation than you need sometimes. Like, for instance, a runway into this, a lot of people were predicting in the last couple of years, when there's a recession coming due, everything looks gravy from, an economic standpoint. Where's this recession going to come from? And now it's really highlighting the fact of like like Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, it shows you who's swimming naked. And it's highlighted also how much we have been taught to consume and consume and consume and not save more. And so many people are just going to get ravished by this economic downturn outside of any stipends that the government is breaking off to send them. I mean, $1,000 here and there, what the hell is that going to do for most small business owners?
No, it's just a pacifier for the immediate response. That's it. It's a pacifier for the reaction.
Right. So no one knows how that's going to play out if we don't open, even if we do open up quickly, I think demand's going to be down. So just being mindful of giving yourself a little bit more space for saving and preparation. It's most of the time we go so much into growth mindset that you want to take all of your profits and reinvest them and just keep putting it towards growing and growing and growing, but just make sure that you're taking some of those and investing in the long term. So for like me as a flipper, if that's all I did, I'm only as good as my last project, right? And I have to keep up that hustle. I have to be grinding. I have to be out at job sites. I have to be doing this. So when I went into flipping for myself, one of my things, that I was better about visualizing was I want to set it up to where I'm able to retire early if I wanted to, and create passive income and financial independence. So that just looks like, buying rental properties and having cash flow that's coming in and keeping getting rid of debt and keeping my overhead really low. Another thing that we've been talking about a lot is mindset. I won't really go into that much because I feel like we've covered a lot of that, but just being less reactive and staying educated. I think sometimes people think like when you're relaxed, and I had the same misnomer too. When I'm relaxed, that means I'm plain ignorance or I'm less effective. And the opposite, it couldn't be more untrue. And that was a big aha moment for me, is just learning to let go of that a little bit. And then also, being good about your books. It's not sexy. Like, no one really is like, it's not cool to get on a podcast and be like, yo, bro, did you spend, 45 minutes going over your P&Ls last Friday night? What's up, homie? Like, no one does that, man. So it's just like, it's not sexy. And especially in flipping houses, your cash flow statements can be all over the place. Like, how am I supposed to project, 6 months worth of cash flow if your business is incumbent on someone going through divorce or someone going through foreclosure or finding a good deal from a wholesaler? And the answer is it's very difficult. But whatever your listeners are, if they're mostly in real estate, depending on what leg of the business that they're in, it's just important in their respective leg of that to be able to read whatever financial statements give you an idea of where you're really at. Now, if that's your personal wealth, if that's cash flow for your business, if that's how much is that employee giving you a return? So if you're paying them whatever, $50,000 a year, what is their output for growth that they've provided back to you? Or same thing with your VAs. So just really getting into the KPIs and the nitty gritty. And if you can't commit yourself to it on a weekly basis, just pencil it in, every couple weeks or monthly, and like worst case scenario, quarterly. Because if you can't sit down every few months to know exactly where you're at financially, good luck running the business for the long term, because it's something's going to change quickly to make you realize how unprepared you really are, which could be happening to a lot of folks in the very near future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's the whole notion of running your business by the numbers. It's not the norm when you first start off. Why? Because you have other, I don't want to say bigger priorities, but it's other priorities, right? You're thinking production, you're thinking how to keep the lights on, you're thinking how to get the word out, you're thinking all kinds of stuff, how to hire, how to delegate, how to, learn to create all those hats and then put them on. And then if you're lucky enough, put them on somebody else. Mm-hmm. But I think that when a business starts off understanding how to run their business by the numbers, everything becomes a lot easier. And yeah, like KPIs play, all into it, having a good sense of what your profit and loss statements are.
And to measure it, and it's the same thing with your marketing campaigns. is you might be spending $10,000 a month or 1,000, it doesn't matter, relative to what you're spending for, what's your conversion rate on this, and why is it so dismal compared to something that might be costing you pennies on the dollar and yet it's killing it? Is it the messaging? Is it the media? Is it the amount that it's going out? So, duly important is measuring your marketing, but I'll put that on the umbrella of just watching your numbers. And to your point, the first few years, yeah, I wasn't great at it. I was pretty horrific at it, to be honest, but I was so focused on growing that once you hit a certain point, you just have to, bring in other people to say, hey, help me look at this and learn how to do it yourself so you can also make those decisions. But it is so important to just pencil it in and set that date with yourself on a scheduled basis to look at the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some KPIs that you follow for your business? And you can be, they don't have to be real estate specific, because I know KPIs translate, across the industries. What would be some of the few that you would recommend people to kind of keep their eye on?
So in the last couple of years, I have done a 180 for my business. I grew and grew and grew and got to a point where I thought if I added more bodies into the mix, it would mean exponential growth. Well, that turned out to not be the case. I had a ton of overhead. My bandwidth just got really thin. And so because of one of my masterminds and just where I was in a personal space, I decided to change all of that, because I would get so in the nitty gritty that I wasn't looking more at the numbers to say, is this really worth it? And is this the vision that I want for myself? But some of the things that I would measure really importantly are like the marketing campaigns to say, how much are we spending on this? What is my cost per acquisition? Where does my cost per lead? What is my cost per acquisition? How many times are we following up with people? What's my net profit on each of our deals? What's my business cycle? Just things like that are more important to me as a flipper. I don't know how that translates for most of your audience, but the things that are really driving forces of like, where are we getting our leads from? How much is that costing me? What's the turn time? What's my net profit? And essentially like, what are my employees costing me? And what am I spending on marketing versus what am I getting from each of those channels? So those were the really big measurements for where I was. And, one of the things I found is not more important, I shouldn't say that I think a lot of people look at flippers, and if they're not closing 100 deals a year, it's like, oh, I have to be at the same level of production. I want it to be known, like, I am not a high volume flipper. And I've had people come up to me after I was on a panel board at the Phoenix Real Estate Investors Association. And this gal came up to me and she's so quiet and meek. And she said, I just want to thank you for saying that you don't have to do a ton of volume every year. Cause she goes, I get so intimidated by seeing all these people that seem to be crushing it and they're closing 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 deals a year. And I feel stepping into this that I could never even touch that, let alone ever get there. And so I think it's just important to note that you don't have to be doing a shit ton of volume to still A, be able to measure this stuff and make it important, or B, have an income and a lifestyle that you deserve and that you wanted to create for yourself. It's just all about, what am I trying to accomplish here? Where is the majority of my income coming from? And how does that align with what I'm good at? And if you can marry those two things, man, that's where you tend to hit the sweet spot, in my opinion.
Love it. I love it. The risk of not knowing what race you're running, I think it's very real. And I think that a lot of people, including myself, I've gotten caught up in that. I've started to run and try to win a race that I don't even care for, and that's exactly the point. Like, for example, this gal that came up to you, she's frustrated and stressed out, and she's having self-worth issues and whatnot because she's adopting a race that's not hers. It sounds like she's got no interest in running that race. It's just a different type of entrepreneurship, different level of entrepreneurship, and she's perfectly happy, where she's at, but yet she's still concerned. So it's perfectly fine to pick your own race and figure out exactly what it is that you want to win at.
Right. Well, and like you said, with social media, if I'm not rolling up in a Lambo with like a $15,000 Rolex on to say like, hey, I just came back from Tahiti on my private jet and, I got my bitches around me. It's just like, people don't want to hear music. Yeah, exactly. Got spinners on my jet. Yeah.
Necklace.
Yeah. Got my chains. It's not fun to say like, hey, guess what, you guys? I have a budget and I live below my means. No one wants to hear that, Raphael. But you know, as someone that I live off of my own income, you know, I have produced my own business and I have to live and die by that. And I've also had a lot of overhead and a lot of debt, and I've come from that. And it's something to where if you read books like The Millionaire Next Door, coming into money and producing a business that is produces a great amount of wealth and is sustainable, to where when you buy all those things that you can keep up with what that means and the maintenance and the overhead of that, congratulations, you know, because there are people that produce that every day. And, you know, Phoenix has a really great real estate investor community, and there's people that are massively successful here. I'm not trying to win that race. I'd rather be successful in my own right, whatever that means, which could or could not fit for other people. But I rather have wealth. I rather have great cash flow. I rather have security. And if I can produce that for myself on whatever level is of importance to me, then that's meaningful. But to get myself leveraged up to the eyeballs because I need to try to keep up appearances with other people that are seemingly killing it is just way out of my league. I'm not interested. And so for those of you out there in your audience that are thinking, well, bro, if I'm not closing, you know, 5 deals a month, am I going to make enough money? And the answer is it all depends on what you're trying to produce. Just again, look at the bottom line and look at, does this fit my vision? Everything's possible. I don't want to take anything off the table. I want all of your audience members to be as successful as they want to be. But there is a danger in looking at social media and saying, this guy leveled up in the first 24 months and he's wholesaling $1.5 billion real estate deals per year. Like, slow your roll. That's not always the case. So make sure that you're well tapped into your real estate investor community, run your race, watch your numbers, do what you're good at, and, you know, produce as much success as you want within that space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Figure out exactly what that looks like. I mean, having the clarity to understand what the path that you should take looks like. I mean, that's huge because we don't, you know, for the most part, we don't have a blueprint. We just branch off on an idea and say, okay, cool, I'm going to give this a shot. And maybe you get an opportunity, like, you know, for example, your experience, you know, working on pretty much acquiring a paid internship and gaining all of that level, you know, all that experience. I had a similar upbringing in terms of real estate. You know, it's capitalizing on that kind of stuff. And then that a lot of people don't want to do the trench work. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to put in the hours. They say, no, if I'm going to go in and work for this company that makes billions of dollars, I have to, you know, get paid my worth. Yeah, but you have to level up to that worth. It's normally not going to happen right out of the gate when you have zero experience. At that point, you're just another set of hands. You know, so understand where you're at, understand how great you can become, and then use it and take it for what it is, right? Beautiful things come out of that, but you have to be able to have the awareness of where you stand in terms of value. Like how great are you providing value to that, to that person, that entity, that company, or those people that are, you know, bringing you on and to solve part of the problem.
And then when you see opportunities, being like, I haven't watched it yet, but the Tiger King, you know, it's like being a tiger and just jumping on those opportunities and taking full advantage of when opportunities come your way that fit that. So, you know, I love what you're saying about doing the reps and putting in the work and just being in the trenches. A lot of people aren't willing to do that. But like, you've been in the investor community for a long time. A lot of us that have been doing this for a long time, it's really exciting, honestly, to see what's happening in the Phoenix investor market, because there's so many folks and faces that have been around here for so long that going into this recession, I think it's really going to separate the speculators that might have been here the last few years to say, I flip houses and I can sell your house in one day as an agent. Well, before you get too self-congratulatory, you know, it's like the market floated you a lot, which is not to say I don't want people to be successful. But if you're a one-trick pony and you can't translate that into a different marketplace, then you weren't really a real estate professional. You were a speculator that happened to capitalize on a good moment. So
good timing. So it's building up a skill set. You have to build up a skill set, you know, round it up, fine tune. I mean, you learn, you get one tool, you learn it, you dial it in, you keep it in your toolbox, and then you add another one, you add another one, you add another one. I mean, I think that's what makes a well-rounded toolbox for action, not just reaction when you know, shit hits the fan. So.
Right.
If you were walking down the street and you run into your 17-year-old self.
Oh God.
You had like 30 seconds to give Tracy the best advice you could,
Oh
and then
man.
run away, what would it be?
And run away. I would say, oh man, I would say, girl, you worry way, way, way too much, and just keep going. And I don't feel like that's terribly dissimilar to how I feel now, but I think at the time, yeah, I think I would just say don't worry, and let go a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Don't worry and let go. I love it. It's like the mantra for entrepreneurs, I think.
Yeah, I feel like we got really woo-woo, more woo-woo than I would think that we would get on this type of show, but hopefully it's helpful to the people watching. I think it's going to be really, really important as we go into this recession, because so much, and it's the same thing with the economy, Raphael. It's like at the heart of it, economics is about supply and demand, textbook, right? But it's not. It's about behavior. It's about feeling. It's about psychology. And it's the same thing in success. Like, I don't come from a background of construction or real estate, and like I can learn it on YouTube and go to Bigger Pockets and books. Like the skill set is one thing, and finding where you're most talented at and capitalizing on it is half the battle, or some part of the battle. I think putting yourself in the mindset of I'm valuable, I can do this, I'm going to get, I don't have to be the best, but as long as I'm better than the next guy, I can get my fair share from this marketplace. So when we go into something like we're about to go into, there probably hasn't been a more important time, if you've been in real estate the last decade or so, to get in that space of non-reaction and learning as much as possible and adapting your skill sets, or maybe learning new skill sets and connecting with other like-minded people, and having a mindset of openness and collaboration and connectivity, rather than just, I'm going to do this all on my own and hustle 90 hours a week and figure it out on my own and just grow. So maybe it was good timing that we had this conversation, and hopefully it helps your audience members.
I know it will, for sure. There's a lot of pragmatic information out there on how to do things. You can always sit down and do a strategy session, and then, look at what the, next business is doing, take ideas from that. But at the end of the day, the artery for entrepreneurship is your mindset. You have to put in that work and build up that resiliency and awareness to overcome and not crumble when the first, curveball hits you.
Right. I know we've talked about this at length. For those of your audience members that are like, okay, this is great, Tracy and Raphael, what's sort of something I can use from this? There is a guy on YouTube that I like called Joe Dispenza, and his whole framework of this is, instead of reacting from a place of what you've been through, be pulled forward by a compelling future that you're looking towards. Okay. So like, we've all had these really shitty experiences, and, none of us want to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So we're constantly reactive and defensive of, this is going to be like that. And instead, visualizing, like you're so good at visualizing, what's that future going to look like when I'm fit and wealthy and have the partner of my dreams and the house of my dreams, and I travel, or whatever freedom looks like to me, and be compelled to act towards that and not defensive towards what you've been through. So Joe Dispenza is the person that I really liked. I align with most of his messaging.
Yeah, he has really, really good stuff. I've read he's got a few books out there. He's got a good meditations. There's one on iTunes, which I do on a regular basis. And it's just morning and evening meditations by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't think we mentioned this throughout the episode, but we are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So people are freaking out, people are pulling out, people are, lacking action, paralysis by fear. So the best thing for that is to stay on it, stay active, keep doing your thing, and focus on what we can control, right?
Right. Well, and to that point too, if you have people that are watching, I'm going into buy and hold mode as well. So my my business model has always been do flips and then pluck the ones off that are really juicy on both ends, have great equity and a lot of cash flow to either burr them or keep them as rentals. I've calmed down on that a little bit the last couple of years for obvious reasons. And now I'm just going to go into full-blown buy as many rentals as I possibly can, but I'm looking to do more with more people. So my mantra changed earlier this year, before COVID ever hit, maybe even the end of last year, to be #build more together. And so if there's folks out there that want to invest and get into long-term buy and holds, that's something that I'm going to be hyper-focusing on. I will still do rehabbing, but there's going to be so much opportunity to build wealth, which is a key component of my vision for my business. So if you have folks out there listening too, they can also go to royceofrealestate.com or contact me through social media to learn more about that.
Well, there you go. If you don't know how to crush it in real estate, but you want to crush it in real estate, I mean, you're putting something together that can help people out. And obviously you have the experience, you have the drive, you have, the means and everything that it takes to bring it to fruition. So I think you're going to crush it there as well.
Yeah.
I love it. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you and how would they go about it?
Yeah, so I'm really easy to find on social media. My handles are all the same, at Royce, Royce, Royce of Real Estate. I'm all up on Instagram. I've revamped my YouTube. I'm trying to put out more content as far as that channel goes, fitting it in with everything else that we have going on. You know how it is.
What?
Yeah, we got nothing better to do,
Yes, projects.
Yeah, and then my website is royceofrealestate.com. That also got revamped. So I just put another property. I just got to market with another property. Have another project that went under contract. I'm gonna go check on a rental today. Looking to take down another project. So really just wanting to document all this and share as much as possible, because I feel like that's important as we shift markets. But also I'm trying to fit it in with everything else that's going on. But I do want to learn and share with you guys and teach as much as possible. So you can find me at royceofrealestate.com and Royce of Real Estate handle.
You just got a backstage pass to the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. Make sure you follow us on YouTube and iTunes and check out our website at ceopulse.com. Stay tuned, stay focused, you got this.